We are thrilled to be joined here by Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, here with us today on Speaking of Strong Style to talk G1. Dave, it is an honor to get to talk to you about this tournament. In a year in which we've seen some of the best wrestling we've seen in a very long time, thinking about the N1, the 5-star, and now the G1, the best might be yet to come. And so we're thrilled to have you here to talk about it. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Dave, I have a question for you to start out. Last year at the G1, we had a match of the year candidate with Okada and Ospreay just blowing everybody out of the water. Since then, we've had a huge shift in New Japan. Factions dissolving, people leaving. We got the Strong Style faction. We got the Just Five guys. Suzuki-gun is gone. Finley is in charge of Bullet Club. What's your takeaway on the Three Musketeers? What's your takeaway on all the new stuff that they've done? How do you feel about it? What's your general vibe about the future of New Japan right now?
I feel like everything's kind of in its infancy, in the sense that it feels like it's a rebuilding year. Like we're not where it should be, or I say it should be, but we're not where we were at peak periods, because everything. I think in this year, a lot of things have kind of started from scratch with like the Bullet Club is essentially almost like a new group. Mm-hmm. Just Five Guys is a new group, and it's kind of like rebuilding these stables and everything like that, to where in time these, you have a lot of new guys that are out there that I think that they want to make into real main eventers. But it's going to take a while to get them there. You can see the building blocks happening. I feel it's very much a rebuilding period for New Japan.
So speaking of building up somebody new here, now SANADA isn't new, but he is the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. They've always treated SANADA as a star, but not at this level before. This is his first run with the big belt. Do you feel that he is a top level guy in the way that Naito or Okada is and always have been? And what does this tournament mean for him? I mean, can his performance change the perception of him as the champion? Because it seems like he has some work to do.
He has work to do. I mean, number one, he's been a guy who was, a tag team guy for years and years and years. And then as a singles guy, he was the guy who comes close, gets a world title match every year or so and loses. And often in a very good match, but he's not perceived, like whatever the big four. He was never part of that. And I think that it's still not at that level. I mean, I look at him in this tournament and he comes out, or when he was on Forbidden Door, even with the belt, it's like he's not Will Ospreay. He's not Okada. He's not Tanahashi even, as far as like just reaction, or even maybe Zach, and other people, Naito, of course. So it's, he has the ability to have good matches, but, in this tournament, most of the guys do. It's just a question of getting them over and getting them to the next level. And I mean, for him, if he went in there and had these dynamite performances match after match, like Okada did when he first got over, yes, it would help him a lot. And so far from what I've seen, it hasn't happened yet. His match today was good. It was definitely a good match, but it wasn't the blow away. I mean, he needs to be in that blow away match of the tournament. And, when he loses, if he loses in the tournament, it needs to be this big thing. We're early too, but, but yeah, no, I mean, some people can walk in and win the belt, because they've had so much time of being built at that level. Like, let's say Kenny Omega, just as an example. When he came in with the belt, it was like a big deal, right? When Naito won it the first time, it was a big deal, but he lost it quickly, but it certainly drew. And with SANADA, no, it's not there. It sort of reminded me of when Evil was champion, when Evil was champion. Of course, that was during the pandemic. So it was very, very hard for him. But I also feel like he had it and he was not a success either.
So, of course, this is a very intricately booked tournament, and Gedo likes to make it tough on himself, Gedo being the New Japan booker. This idea of having 4 blocks and 2 guys advancing, and this is a totally different format for this one, and very complicated. He just, I guess he likes a challenge then, because he's got a lot to figure out here. I've been spending my time trying to reverse engineer this from just because we know A1 faces C2 and things, and I spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out how all that was going to come.
I kind of think like the first and the seconds, in each block are, like you can kind of look and get a lot of them right, I think. But who's going to be first and who's going to be second that's a shot in the dark.
Right.
It really is.
Right. So we are back to, a lot of people might not realize this, but this is the first G1 with cheering, because Japan really didn't incorporate the cheering until just a few months ago. How much is that going to change the perception of the G1 this year, do you think, as opposed to the last few years, where there wasn't the cheering and the feedback kind of displayed that with the stateside crowd?
It helps, of course, but I think the thing that I've noticed so far is in my opinion, the 32 guys is a mistake, because it's the depth is not there. And I think people want, what I've seen with especially from the first two nights, is that people want a G1 where every match is great. And what we're having is a G1 where, there's a couple of really good matches every show. But there's a lot of matches that are just and guys that are just kind of there where you just go, okay, whatever, like a Mikey Nichols or a Chase Owens, just as an example. Even Hikuleo, I know is a project for the future and everything like that. But it just feels like these type of guys, they're out there, but nobody really sees them as, people don't stop and go, I gotta watch this match. Whereas in other years, it was like, if there was like 8 matches on the show, there were 6 of those matches. Then you'd have the Toru Yano match, which is a completely different thing, which was okay because it was different from the other matches. Now you have, what I would call, and they're fine matches. And sometimes they're kind of scary, but it's like, I think people are, instead of watching like every match in the tournament, I'm sensing people are picking and choosing, like, to watch 2 or 3 matches on each day.
It's also interesting with the crowds in Japan for a lot of reasons, of course, but even though they are allowed to cheer now, and there aren't any restrictions on where they can sit or anything like that, we still don't have the noise we used to have. It's taken a while to get that back. And I remember going to, just seeing these things. I was in Japan in 2019. I saw Night of the N1 tournament, and I remember the noise in Korakuen Hall was so cool. And now you look at that, and there's still a lot of applauding and things. They haven't really gotten back into the spirit of it quite yet, which does make for an interesting atmosphere. There's some of it, but not the way there used to be. And I guess it's going to take a while for that to come back. Hopefully it will.
And the same thing with attendance. It's like, I'm used to watching these shows with packed crowds, and like watching Sapporo and even today's show even more, where it's just almost like today's show was like a good normal show crowd, but not like this packed super, what I call atmosphere of a G1. And Sapporo, you saw a lot of it, especially the second show. You saw a lot of empty seats, more than you would see when G1 Sapporo 2 days, opening with 2 days of sellouts. We're a long way, that's why I say it's a rebuilding period for New Japan, and a lot of the stuff is going to take place later. And the key is, the key to this company is, I think Yota Tsuji and to a lesser extent Narita and Umino and some of these other guys, but becoming that next Okada level star and really clicking. And I think that Tsuji's probably the best of all of them when it comes to the charisma. But you need that rebuilding thing. And Umino has a look, and he's pretty good, but his facial expressions aren't quite there yet. And there's still a ways to go with him. Like, I think people, kind of see him, but they're not like super behind him either. Like I've seen with some of the guys when they're on their way up, like, Tanahashi at the same stage, people were really into his elevation, I guess would be the word. And with Tsuji and even Narita, I don't feel the same thing. I don't think they're quite into it, but it could be something that takes more time. Not everyone hits with the crowd at the same pace, obviously.
At the show today, we heard the crowd. It was interesting. I feel like the fans are ready for this, though. I think they're anxious for it, and not that they're in full rebellion the way sometimes WWE fans get. But what I mean by that is, at the show today, the most crowd noise the beginning of a match had was Tsuji and Narita. The rest of it, and that tells me a little bit like they're excited about these guys. They are interested to see where they go. At the same time, Geto kind of gets them there and then pulls them back a little bit. Like Shota always seems to come up short right now, which is a story to tell. His big win over one of the big four needs to be in a huge moment and things, and it's coming. But Tsuji, of course, debuting at Dominion and then losing, so they've kind of gotten excited about it and then had it yanked out from under him. So, but they're cautiously optimistic about these guys because they do seem to be reacting to them even more so than some of the more established ones.
Well, it's new and you want something new. That's why I think Kiyomiya is so important in this tournament, because it's just all new matches with a new guy who they know is good, who had the big program with Okada earlier this year. And I think people can't wait to see. They really want, I think, Kiyomiya to advance, because I think one of the matches everyone wants to see in this tournament is Okada and Kiyomiya. And obviously they're in different blocks.
Definitely trying to tease that. I don't know if they actually get to that match, but it'd be pretty interesting if they got all the way to maybe like the quarterfinal, teased getting to it, and then pulled it away from people. Just kind of, that guy worked that hard, and then makes you want to see that Okada Kiyomiya match later on even more.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be done, yeah.
You want to jump onto the bracket talk real quick? So, Dave, we got the A bracket: Sanada, Shota Umino, Ren Narita, Yoda-Tsuji, Hikuleo, Chase Owens, Gabe Kidd, and Kato Kiyomiya. Right now, it looks like Sanada and Kiyomiya might be the favorites with the bottlenecking of the Three Musketeers. What's your take on this bracket, how it was designed, and generally the ideas behind it?
Well, I mean, I think that the key is you get the young guys in there with Sanada, and they come close and tease the idea that again someday maybe they will beat Sanada or some of the other guys, and then Kiyomiya, obviously the new stuff. I think Sanada and Kiyomiya are the favorites in the bracket. I think that's the two people want to see go. But I think that it's important that Umino and Tsuji and Narita, I guess do whatever it would be, 4-3 type of thing. Get some wins. I know they're not going to go 4-3 because there've been draws in there already, but get some good draws and get some good wins and take a few losses in the way. But at least what I would say is one signature win from all of them and maybe a couple other wins.
It's an interesting way to do it because they have already teased the idea that the Reiwa Three Musketeers are going to do a round robin of 20-minute draws with one another. Narita's already drawn with each of the other two.
Right.
Probably two of the better matches in the tournament. We still have Tsuji versus Shota to go. But that could be a way of those guys dropping points, so to speak, without getting pinned, which could allow Kiyomiya to get in. So that's
sure.
That's a pretty slick way they could handle that. And so, yeah, that was the one thing too. You had some of the in a block B, which we're going to come to next, is kind of top heavy block. It feels like there are two real front runners in this one. Of course, one of the tropes of the G1 is an early loss for a major contender. And we saw that on night one. And Geto likes to put guys behind the 8 ball, make them put them behind the, get them down early. And then so they have to run off a series of wins late in order to get through. So, but
and often, and sometimes get people over with a bunch of wins early and then beat them at the end. But the couple of wins early include upsets. So when they don't make the final, it's still like you remember their surprise wins early.
I feel like Kingston is a model for that in this tournament. That he's going
they did it with Moxley. John Moxley was a great example of that, where he just went on this run and then kind of stumbled over the last hurdles. But in block, boy, for a company that still gets a lot of their money off of ticket sales, it's hard to imagine going to the quarterfinals without Okada and Will Ospreay in it, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think they're probably. I mean, Okada is probably the biggest draw. With Naito, and Ospreay's probably right there, right after that, I think. So yeah, I think, but they're the ones talked about. I mean, the thing with Ospreay obviously is he's working through. I mean, they're all working through injuries, but he's working through serious injuries in this thing, and the idea of keeping him what's the word I'm looking for? Keeping him healthy through this thing because of his natural instincts of trying to have these incredible matches all the time while hurt, which is something he's been doing for years and years and years. I mean, I've seen him so many times when he was really hurt, and then you go, well, he's going to have to tone down for a couple of weeks, and then you watch him and he doesn't tone down. So
I saw his new finisher today, the leap of faith, the corkscrew senton, and I had wondered, because his arm was just kind of in rough shape, if that was a new finisher designed to kind of protect his body from aggressively doing that.
I don't know, because I didn't see it that way. I saw it as just a new finisher. It looked to me like he was trying to do the the tiger driver thing, and he did it, but now it's almost like maybe that's not the smart one to do, and come up with another one, because every couple of years or whatever, year or two, he comes up, like first it was whatever was the hidden, he had the one finisher. What was the
Stormbreaker, Hidden Blade?
No, before the Stormbreaker, the Hidden Blade, the Stormbreaker, and now we're at the new one. And the first one was, what was the one he was doing when he was a junior heavyweight?
Oh boy, it's been a minute. I'm blanking on it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it.
The Ozcutter?
The Ozcutter, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was his finisher. Now it's a setup move. Yeah.
All right.
There you go. Well, I mean, I think they've set up a nice little last day drama thing with Taichi, because Taichi, they usually book fairly strong these days, and he has the mythical tiebreaker over Ospreay. So I think they could do a thing where maybe Taichi's in the mix and Will Ospreay has to get a big win on the last night to avoid Taichi slipping through or something. So I feel like Taichi's going to be in the mix, but it still feels like Okada and Ospreay in the B to me anyway. So
yeah. Actually, I think that's probably a good way to do it too. And Taichi's he's a good third place guy, fourth place guy. Yeah, in that block. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about a guy considered a lazy junior heavyweight a few years ago. Now he's really one of the more entertaining guys on the roster, and he and Shingo Takagi did great things with that King of Pro Wrestling title. So just a really strong couple of years from him. It's been good.
He can really go. He can really go. Yeah.
All right, so we got the C block, and this is really an open field that we got here. We got Tama Tonga, we got Tomohiro Ishii, we got Shingo Takagi, we got Mikey Nichols, we got Hinare, which that was a match that happened. Eddie Kingston, David Finlay, and Evil. This is the hard-hitting bracket, and I don't mean that to be like facetious after what we saw with Hinare and Michael Nichols, which seemed like two guys that had something to prove and not really understanding what they were trying to prove. But I'm just glad everybody's okay. How do you see this bracket, Dave?
I mean, I think Finlay and Takagi are kind of like my picks to go through. I mean, Ishii's one of those guys where he's going to, he may have the most good matches in this tournament of anyone, but I don't see him making the two. Kingston, dark horse. I think that they might go with him to make the final eight, so to speak. But I think Finley's actually one of the favorites to go all the way in the tournament, because he's one of those building block guys he's got something. He's a very good wrestler, but I think as far as the aura of being big four, he certainly doesn't have. And I think that as leader of Bullet Club, they want him to have it. So that's what I think that Finlay might do real, real well. And Takagi, of course, I think Kingston beating Takagi made me think that it's probably going to be Takagi, as the other one, rather than, they give Kingston the win now. And like you said, almost the same type of situation with Ospreay and Taichi in this one, where he's got that tiebreaker win. But, Takagi's obviously one of the best guys that they've got in the company. And so he'd be good to get in the final eight. I mean, the thing, Kingston, because he's the AEW rep, and they also obviously want to be good to AEW, I think that he certainly has a chance. And at worst, I see him as like, 4-2-1 type of a, 4-3, 4-2-1, 5-2 type of a guy.
I kind of thought that when he got that strong title, that they kind of had a ceiling on him, because Finlay's got the never open weight title. You got Shingo Takagi had the King of Pro Wrestling title, and it was kind of the gimme to give him the strong title and then him have a good showing, but have other guys move on in the bracket.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that he's going to have a loss or two. I mean, that's the one thing when you watch G1 is all of those guys that have the belts, there's that loss or two, and that's your fall championship matches.
And it's the thing that works against Ishii in this situation is that he's in an interesting spot, and he's almost bulletproof. He can lose to anyone, and he never loses face with the crowd. Like the fans love him the same whether he wins or loses. So Geto knows that and knows that, well, he doesn't have to win all the matches. He doesn't cool off because he does a job for someone. And so in these tournaments, he tends to be the one that puts people over along the way. So I agree. I think Finlay and Takagi make the most sense. Plus, that it gets an easy route to Shingo versus Sanada in the quarters, which is a pretty sexy matchup. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing too with Ishii is that he's going to have a great match with almost everyone. So, when it comes to G1, one of the key things with the crowd is not just who wins and loses, but who really excites them in winning and losing. And it's almost like with Ishii, it's like, yeah, we know he can lose 5 out of 7 matches, but we also know that probably, 5, 6 out of the 7 are going to be great. So it's okay. It's like he gains, I think in a lot of ways, G1 has made his career, and he's never won a G1 and he's never been in the finals. But when people look at his career, they think of Kenny Omega match and, Kota Ibushi match. And, it's Tanahashi. I mean, like all of his greatest matches, or almost all, were in G1. He's Mr. G1 as far as bell to bell, having those great matches, G1 MVP type of thing.
I definitely thought that there was a possibility that we might just get Ishii in there just to like shock people and do something a little bit different than no one would be expecting. But there are narrative things with other wrestlers that seems like might be the better bracket. All right, let's move on to the D bracket. We got Hiroshi Tanahashi, Hiroki Goto, Toriano, Tetsuya Naito, Zack Sabre Jr., Shane Haste, Jeff Cobb, and Alex Coughlin. It seems like this is designed for Zack Sabre Jr. and Tetsuya Naito to move forward, but are there any other people in the bracket that you feel might have a shot?
I mean, they would be my favorites. I think Cobb maybe, but Cobb beating Naito was one of those things where it's like, if Naito had beaten Cobb, I almost would have thought maybe Cobb, even more. But Cobb is always one of those guys who gets some really big wins in G1, but isn't there at the end. Even that year where he set the record for most consecutive wins, he didn't make the finals. So I see something like that where he gets some good wins. And but yeah, I mean, I think Naito, I think it wouldn't be good for Naito not to make the final 8. And Zach is, I mean, as far as the foreigners and everything like that, especially with Jay White gone, I see Ospreay and Zach. I know they want Finlay there, but I see Ospreay and Zach as the 2 big stars.
Yeah, you can top level. Would you have Zack Sabre win the bracket or Naito win the bracket?
It's a tough one. I mean, the thing is it really depends on what kind of things that you want to do in your, and everything like that, but I mean, Naito it is a bigger star still, but what's funny is it depends on, I think that the guy who you want to go with from that bracket, maybe you put him in second, so the other guy gets the rub of finishing first, but the second place guy goes the furthest in the tournament. So if you want Zach to go to the finals, let's just say, have him go second. If you want Naito to go to the finals, have Zach win the bracket. So that's kind of, and they think like that. They try to give everyone or the key people something when it's over where you can kind of say, hey, they did something good. My guy made the finals, or my guy won the bracket.
Which guy do you think would make the finals, Naito or Zach?
I think that Zach would be the better one to make the finals as far as match quality goes. Because Zach, the thing with Zach is he's got that style where I'm more confident in him physically being there at the end more than some of these other guys where you're afraid they're going to break down. And that's a key part of it, where Zach, not that Zach doesn't get hurt because everyone does, but his style is the less conducive to a lot of wear and tear compared to other guys' styles.
I'm watching the way they're booking this, and Jeff Cobb reminds me of a better working version of Bad Luck Fale. And remember how Fale would always score like 10 points in the G1 year after year and always protected.
And he gets some big wins. Yeah.
Yeah, he could, because he can credibly beat anyone in one match, right? You know, you could always buy it. You don't have to sell anybody on the idea of Jeff Cobb winning a match. But then again, he always just kind of not quite gets there. So it's very useful in a tournament like this. It's great to have a guy like that can do it that well.
Yeah.
So I got a question on this one here. In 2018, this is the name that always jumps out to me. Adam Page only scored 6 points in the tournament, but he was kind of the guy a lot of people were talking about coming out of it. He kind of broke out in that tournament, had terrific matches all the way through.
Yeah. I think
changed the perception of him.
Changed the perception of his whole career, and that's what you always look for in G1. That guy, you know.
Yeah. Is there one this year?
Well, it's too early to say. I mean, and the thing of this year is there's probably 6 or 7 guys, you know, Umino Tsuji, you know, Phantasmo, you know, I mean, guys that if they had a tournament like Adam Page could be that guy, you know, I mean, that's kind of up to just, you know, again, like a guy who you just don't, you know, I mean, Adam Page didn't have a rep for being anything that great. And all of a sudden it was like, man, he's like really good. And, you know, from that point on, once AEW formed, I mean, he was a top guy in AEW from day one.
All right, Dave, I took your notes of who you had picked throughout this discussion. And so we're going to do a little bit of quick bracketology, take your picks on these as we go.
Okay.
SANADA versus Shingo. Who do you got?
SANADA against Shingo. In the final, so we're talking, this is the quarterfinals?
This is the quarterfinals.
Man, it's hard to beat SANADA in the quarters, but I think that's a great win for Shingo, and of course sets up SANADA and Shingo for a big show in October, November. So I say Shingo.
Okay, round 2: Okada versus Zack Sabre Jr.
Wow.
Oh boy.
I mean, I just feel that Okada is not the champion. And while it is certainly repetitive for him to win this tournament, you know, you're talking about Wrestle Kingdom main event at a time when, you know, it's not guaranteed 40,000 or even 25,000 people. And you really want the guy who can give you the 25 to 30. So Okada is one of those guys. So I'm going to go with Okada.
Okay. Next, we got David Finlay versus Will Ospreay.
That's a real interesting one. It's like Will Ospreay's never won the G1, and last year he came so close, and everybody really, you know, he did a great promo, and everyone really wanted him to win. So on that, and also I think Will Ospreay's the guy who can headline the Tokyo Dome, especially after the matches with Omega. So if it's me, it is Will Ospreay, but I could certainly see them going with Finlay for other reasons. That's a very tough one to pick.
All right. And then we got Naito versus Kaito Kiyomiya.
If that ends up with Kiyomiya winning, he gets a big signature win over Naito, and it goes to Okada and Kiyomiya. If they can,
it would go to Ospreay to Kiyomiya. He would have to still go through Ospreay to get to Okada.
Okay. If it went that way, then I would say Naito, because I don't see Kiyomiya beating Ospreay, and if he doesn't get to Okada, he can lose.
Okay. We get down to Takagi versus Okada.
Okada.
Okay, and we get to Ospreay and Naito.
Man, Ospreay's beaten him so many times in a row that you almost feel it's Naito's turn. So I guess, but if it's Naito, if it's Ospreay's year, he has to win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's at that stage I'd go with Ospreay.
Then we get back to Ospreay and Okada.
I would reverse last year. So I guess I got Ospreay.
Yeah. I go back and forth between Ospreay and Naito for the same reason. It's supposed to be Ospreay's year. They made a point of that after the Kenny Omega match at the Dome. 1 year, right? And then so you plant. But then when SANADA won the title, I thought, boy, they have to do SANADA versus Naito for all the states at some point.
SANADA Naito is a very big match potentially, and they've teased it already.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. I mean, they definitely have, it's not as obvious as most years.
Yeah.
They definitely have about 4 different options of ways
Yeah.
to go, but you still got to go with, like, I could see, man, do you go all the way with SANADA for the rest of the year, or do you have somebody knock off SANADA?
Yeah.
In which case maybe you put SANADA and Naito, but that's not the title match. Maybe you have maybe you have Ospreay wins G1 and Okada wins over SANADA, and then you go with Okada and Ospreay at the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah.
Winner take all between the 2 titles.
And yeah, that's been done. It's been done before, but it's also the guarantee of that super match that you really want to headline Wrestle Kingdom.
And last year they did the Eastern main event with Okada and Jay White, and they did the Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega. There's no reason why they couldn't do that again with Okada Ospreay, and then Shingo, Sanada, and Naito as another main event, just not for a title. There's enough history there.
Or you have Ospreay and Naito. Because they beat. But let's say you have Ospreay and somebody in one main event, and then the other main event is Okada and Omega.
Yeah.
I'd be into it.
Yeah, and there's so many ways.
It's years since they've had that match.
Yeah, and Okada is fascinating this year more than even usual, because usually you figure he's either the champion or he's going to be the G1 winner because he's gonna main event the Tokyo. That like last year it was like he's winning this thing. This year they could do so many things with him. We don't know when the Bryan Danielson rematch is. Tokyo Dome's not a bad spot for that. They could always build up.
That actually makes a lot of sense. But we don't know Bryan Danielson and everything.
You can always build up Shota Umino. Shota Umino has it out for him, and if they really wanted to build him, they could give him a grudge match against Okada. There's Kiyomiya that you could potentially put in there. So more so than usual, there are different avenues, each of which is interesting for Okada.
Yeah. I mean, if you go talk about Omega, Danielson, Umino, I think not the Tokyo Dome this year, although certainly a year later, hopefully we're there. And Kiyomiya, yes, too. So you got, I think, 3 big ones, and of course Will Ospreay or Naito. I mean, those were there's all possibilities, and you could end up with SANADA and Okada. That's another possibility.
Dave, I want to thank you so much for giving so much of your time here today. We're gonna wrap this up. You're welcome back here anytime, obviously. But thank you again for taking time out of your day to talk New Japan Pro Wrestling with us.
Okay,
Thanks
cool.
so much. All right.
Okay, bye-bye.